Hey everyone, welcome back to a very special edition of Canadian Gamers. We are ending our Halloween special 2015, just like we did last year, with a special podcast where we talk about a whole bunch of different things. So I'm here with Steven.
Hello.
He's very excited man, isn't he?
Yeah, I am. Been waiting all week for this.
All week.
All week.
Just all week. I've been waiting years for it now. Anyway, so we really hope that you enjoyed this year's special. There was a lot of heavy hitters on there. We had Symphony of the Night, Obscure, Nightmare Busters, Ghostbusters, Little Red Riding Hood, Zombie Barbecue, and Resident Evil on the Sega Saturn. So I'm going to start with you. What were some of your highlights?
Well, for sure, the Resident Evil one is hard to beat. I've always wanted that review because I always was curious about that game. When I had a Saturn, I tried to get myself a copy for a reasonable price, and I never could find one on eBay for. I think the cheapest I ever found it for was like $40 or $50, and at the time I found that to be a bit too expensive for a game I already own on multiple systems, so I was glad to see you finally cover that one, and that's pretty much the biggest highlight for me. But of course, Symphony of the Night is also another classic that I keep hearing you talk about, and I always wanted to hear what you had to say about that one. So that was pretty cool, and the Super Nintendo game that nobody knows, and I'll admit I'm one of those that never heard about that game. That was also pretty cool to see. So I thought your lineup was pretty solid.
Yeah, same with yours. Ghostbusters in particular, because I had to capture the footage for those that don't know, and it was fun actually going back and playing Ghostbusters just for a bit, of course, and Obscure. That was quite interesting considering that's actually a PlayStation 2 era game, and you wouldn't really know it when you look at the footage. I was kind of surprised, and then finding out that the developers actually continue to support that game and update it. I have no idea why, but it's interesting. And your little DS game was kind of neat. Kind of hard to capture footage of that bad boy, though, I'll say that, especially the setup I had to use. But whatever. So this is it. This is, I think we really did have a really unique and solid lineup. We kept the rule going where it was, well, I don't think we did it last year, but this year we said we wanted one title per franchise. That's what we didn't do last year. But last year we did successfully do one game per platform. So this year we just made it a little bit harder by saying one game per franchise and one game per platform. So now the next thing, before we move on, I just wanted to ask you guys, what are some games that, we could potentially consider for the Halloween Special 2016 edition? Are there games that, we haven't already covered? Because you see, that's the key thing, because there are a lot of games out there. And we may have already covered some of them, Halloween-themed or, horror-themed or what have you. So just go ahead and let us know. We can compile a massive list, and it'll still be a nice surprise for you guys because I already have a few ideas of, at least I have one very good idea for Steven for next.
I'm looking forward to replaying that game again. And I also want to ask you guys because last year we pretty much concentrated on scarier horror games. This year we did a nice mix of horror games and also Halloween-themed games. So I'm wondering if you guys, what do you prefer? Do you enjoy this mix of horror and Halloween games, or would you prefer us to concentrate more on horror games or on Halloween-themed games? So let us know in the future.
Yeah, that's actually a very good idea. Thanks for sharing that. That's good. Okay, so first thing, we've been talking about this for a little while now, and that is our Halloween giveaway. And I'd actually like to make this a tradition, if at all possible. It really depends, what happens in the marketplace and whatnot. But typically, more quote-unquote scary games get released around this time of the year if developers are smart. And apparently Sony wasn't one of them, because Until Dawn was actually released, I think it was in the summer or something like that. It's been a while now that it's been out. And I don't really know why that is. The games perform much better than Sony thought, and we thought it would be a great idea to give that away to you guys. But we don't want to just give it away and do something, too simple. So here's the challenge. We want to know, what does the COE mean in Project COE? Now, I will give you a little bit of some background, just so you know. The site, in one form or another, I believe it opened in 2004. So it's been a long time already. And the site actually started, really, the foundations were on the Insider message boards way back when, on the Nintendo message boards. That's where Steven and I met, and that's where like a whole bunch of us met. We were all a bunch of Nintendo nerds, and we actually formed something called the Iris Network, which was basically like a rumor mill sort of thing. And I can't give you much more than that. I think that's good enough. So if I don't even know if there's anyone who's been following us since way back then, but if so, wow, thanks. That's pretty cool to know. So yeah, that's I think that's enough history for you, or enough. I don't want to go too much more in depth, but that's where the name comes from. It really does come from that particular moment in time when we were just wee little children, and something, I can't believe that. Do you realize how many years ago that was now?
Yeah, that's like, 11 years?
Yeah, I've been talking to you for 11 years.
Well, yeah. I'm glad I didn't have a cell phone back then. But...
Oh man, that would have been really scary, the text. Oh boy. Anyway, so to get more into rules here. So, we're going to cover shipping and all that jazz. Don't worry about any of that. If you do come from international, in other words, if you are not Canadian or American, I don't know if we'll be able to mail it tracked shipment or tracked package. And the reason why I want to mention this right out front is because I actually held a raffle, and the winner was from South Korea. On a message board, and it was going to cost me $47 to get tracking for the package. I was like, holy crap, that's a lot of money. So I'm not sure. Depends on where you come from and what the prices are. We'll go from there. Yeah. So more rules. First person who guesses gets the game immediately. Again, it's the PlayStation 4, well, I think there is only one version. I think the PS3 version was canceled. Anyway, of Until Dawn. It's up to you what you want to do with it. You can sell it if you don't want it. You can play it, give it to a friend, do whatever you want. So anyone who knows what the COE is in Project COE, if you guess it right, you win the game. If there are more than, if no one knows, or there's a couple of you that are sort of guessing and this and that, well, then we'll randomly select one of you. And if nobody has any clues of nothing, if there's no guessing, if there's no whatever, if you guys are just lame and don't want to participate, then you suck. Just guess. You want to add anything for that?
No, that's pretty fine. Just guess and leave a comment. Worst case, if only one people leaves a comment, well, there you go. You have a 100% chance of winning. So don't be shy.
Exactly. Don't be shy. So speaking of not being shy, there was something else we wanted to do, something Steven thought of, and I always say, well, he says it too, that he's the brains behind this operation. And this is a good idea. This is something, I don't know why we didn't do this before, and I don't want to call it a mailbag, but it's something like that. We don't expect you to ask questions per se, but what we want to do is take some of your comments that you mentioned on our previous podcast, and then maybe just discuss a little bit in the next podcast or the follow-up podcast. So that's what we're going to do. We'll have to come up with some sort of name so that I can say, all right, guys, now it's time for...
Yeah, with a little, song that goes to it.
There you go. Exactly. So the last podcast that we had, I don't remember what the number was or anything like that, but we were talking about Mario Maker and things like that. And it was a tremendous success. We got one comment. And unless, of course, you count Steven's random comments all over the place. So it was from Lord Doppelgamer. And I just wrote a little bit of what he said. So basically he goes, and I quote, because that's what I do, I never enjoy level building games, even with the one that potentially started it all, the original Lode Runner. Challenging levels that people make available for play doesn't really appeal to me. There we go. So what would you like to discuss about that?
I've never played Lode Runner. What's Lode Runner? You probably know that.
Yeah, of course. I have it on the site, damn you. You don't watch our videos.
For what system was it released?
The original one, I think, is PC game, but it was released on the NES. But I actually reviewed a Sega Saturn import of Lode Runner and Lode Runner Extra, I think it was called. It was basically almost like a remake. So the idea is, obviously, it's a 2D game. And what you can do, your little guy, he can't jump. He has no weapons in the original anyway. All he can do is essentially dig, if you want to call it that, or whatever. He can make the block to the left or to the right of him disappear. So an enemy who's walking towards you to touch you from, let's say, the right-hand side coming to to the left where you're standing, if you open or dig a block, he can fall into it, and then you can run over his head. You can kill the enemy, but he will reappear almost instantly from the top of the screen, coming back down to kill you. And your objective was to just collect, I think it was all the gold or something in the stage, and then that would be it. That'd be the end of the stage. And they got progressively more and more and more complex as you went along. Like you had ladders that you could climb and things like that, so you could very easily pin yourself. But what was so cool about that game was it was one of the first games that allowed you to build your own levels. And my brother and I used to do this all the time, where we would make impossible to defeat levels, and that's what he's referring to.
Oh, that's pretty cool, because like I said in the comment, and I think I've talked about it in the last podcast too, is that I also never really enjoyed level editor games. I remember when I was a kid playing Excitebike, I had fun making levels in Excitebike, but that wasn't really complicated. But then when I think the first game that really hit me was Little Big Planet. That was a big deal when it came out, and I bought that game, played a bit out of it, but never actually was able to make a level out of it. Never actually had time or the patience, or I didn't want to sit down and try to learn the basics of the game. And the same thing happened with Little Big Planet karting. I tried to make levels in that game, and I found it too complicated and stuff like that. And I assumed that with Mario Maker, I was going to make a level or two and then call it a day and just play other people's levels and eventually get tired of the game, like most level editor games. Another game that I bought, I remember, was RPG Maker, but that is a lot more complex, so I won't talk about that one that much. But that is another example of a game I tried to make something out of and fail horribly. But with Mario Maker, it's even though I think I have a similar experience than you and Lord Doppelgamer with these type of games, I actually ended up, so far I've created 17 levels, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. So I believe that you shouldn't stop at whether or not you like level maker games. I believe, I'm not sure if by the time this gets out you'll have seen my review of Mario Maker, but if not, what I wanted to say is that I believe that if you are like me, were born in the 80s or the early 90s, whatever the case is, and you grew up with Mario, I think you should give this game a try, and you might be surprised, because I think it really comes down to nostalgia, and if you're an 80s or 90s kid, I think you're going to love this game. Even if it's a level creator game and you're not really big on that, like I was, give that game a chance, and you'll be surprised, I think.
Well, that was very well said, and I'm going to add nothing to that, because that's perfect. And I think that's a good format that we can do. If someone chimes in like that was great. That was absolutely perfect. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
So now, since, you know, it was so popular, that was our one and only real comment. So we'll move on. And now we're going to get into like the big crux of what we're going to actually talk about today. And we did this last time where we discussed, what was it? You just mentioned it before.
Yeah, we talked about last year the 5 scariest games we've ever played.
And this year, what do you want to talk about?
We're going to talk about our 5 favorite horror games. So there's a slight difference here.
Oh boy, if you're probably hearing my cat go crazy in the background. Okay, so top 5 horror games. So would you like to start your number 5?
Sure. My number 5 is Alien Infestations on the Nintendo DS. And I know some of you guys will be, oh my god, you're a baby, that's not really scary. But for me it was. And I believe for you it was too. You were surprised by how scary that game is. It's not the scariest game ever. Of course it's not. But I want to talk about horror games, and my opinion, it falls into the horror games, and it just happens to be one heck of an excellent game. So that's why it's number 5. It kind of plays like a Metroidvania, and there's a fantastic review on our channel of that game done by Mr. Executive Director himself here. So go check that out after you're watching this podcast. It's a cheap game. You can find it on eBay for like $7. I believe it's on Amazon for $20. So it's a really cheap game, and one that works on your 3DS if you don't even have a DS. Get it, try it, it's amazing.
Okay, now, my number 5, because there's a lot of different categories here, right? Like, you've got horror, you've got survival horror, you have scary, you have all these different types of things. But I still consider this in the horror category, and that is Silent Hill, the original Silent Hill. Why? Because that is a friggin' creepy ass game, man, especially when you go into that, well, I used to call it the future setting. It's not the future setting, but you know what I mean, where it's like all dark and there's metal and shit everywhere, and it's just that screwed with my mind. That was a really, on the original PlayStation, that was a really, really creepy game. And yeah, that's my number 5.
I actually never tried that game, I believe. I played a year ago, I think we had a game night and we played Silent Hills 2. And besides the fact that it looks crappy nowadays, I thought that it was confusing as heck. Like, the things you had to do and all the doors and the rooms, they all look the same. So I don't know how people were able to navigate these games back in the day, but I guess it's just that we're spoiled today.
Yeah, I mean, with the original one, you had a map system that would show you, like, parts of the street that were cut off. And that was okay. Like, that's why this is not my number 5. Because, like, I don't consider jump scares, like, enough. You know what I mean? Like, it's that, for me, a horror game is literally that feeling of dread that, like, at any moment, something can happen. And with Silent Hill, because it was basically a game where you could see 3 feet in front of you, that's what started to do it. As you would go on in the game, you would see, like, they looked like babies with knives that were coming at you, but you couldn't you couldn't see anything because of the fog, and when you went into these nighttime areas, or like the school, for example, damn, man, was that creepy. You'd hear, like, babies crying and stuff, and then you hear, like, rah, rah, and these little things crawling up on the floor to come and get you. I was like, what the hell is going on? So to me, yeah, that definitely did it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, these games haven't aged that well.
But everybody that loves those games always tells me that it's an amazing series. So I don't doubt you on that one. So what's your number 4?
Okay, my number 4 is, again, from what I just told you about what I consider a horror game, is I'm going to say Resident Evil Remake. Or the original Resident Evil, but not so much. I'd say the remake, because with Resident Evil 1, it was more jump scares. I'd never seen anything like that. There was moments where I'd pitch my controller, but I'm the type of guy where if I play a game long enough, that feeling of dread starts to go away. It really does. It just, for whatever reason, I don't know if I build my confidence up. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but it just goes away quite quickly. And that happened with the original Resident Evil. But with the remake, with those damn Crimson Heads, I think they were called, where they would come back if you didn't burn the bodies, and the fact that the game purposely screwed with your mind. If you were a big fan of the original Resident Evil, they had hallways that would like veer off and come like to completely different areas and stuff. And I was always uneasy with that game. Always. When I would play it, I would always be like, okay, I know what's supposed to be in this room, but what's in this room? And then you'd get to an area where there was like a whole new section that wasn't even in the game, and I'd be like, oh man, I'm genuinely like creeped out here. So yeah, that was a great game.
Yeah, no, it was a great game, but it's not gonna be on my list because I don't like it. I like these 5 games more than that one. And one of the things about that game I did manage to complete it, but I had to play it with a guide and I had to play it with the lights on. It was way, way too scary for me, that game.
Yeah, but
oh my god, it was too scary. Like, just like even to this day, that game looks hasn't aged. Like it looks very, very good. I always wondered how they managed to make that game on the GameCube. And I know people say it's because of the pre-rendered graphics or whatever, and I don't understand what that means, and I don't see the difference. But I just thought it looked amazing back then, and it still does today. I've never played the HD remake, but I'm quite curious how it matches up. But yeah, like I thought, like even there's a boss, I think her name was Lisa, and I found that section like really like it almost made me tired and nervous because of what feeling I had during that section, and I was so glad when that was over, because that was nerve-wracking, that part with Lisa.
But you see, to me, that's a horror game.
Yeah, no, I understand. Understand that you enjoy a horror game for different reasons than I do. Like I like to be scared, but like I enjoyed that game. Don't get me wrong. It's just that the other games on my list I enjoyed a bit more. But sometimes I have limits which are really are reached quite easier than you. But yeah, that game was scary.
Okay, so give me your number 4 then. 'Cause I'm curious.
Number 4 is another GameCube game. It was made by Silicon Knights. Do you have a guess?
Oh, yes.
And that would be Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was a fantastic game. I remember beating it. I think I had to beat it 3 times to get the true ending. I thought the puzzles were actually fantastic in that game compared to other survival horror games where they make you... well, I guess some of the puzzles were also not... They didn't make that much sense, but I thought they were better for some reason. I don't know why. I can't think of anything to prove what I'm saying, but whatever. It was good puzzles. And the sanity effects were pretty original back then. I don't think any game had done that before. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm not sure if anything has been done since that matches Eternal Darkness. And the biggest surprise is there's never been a sequel yet. Probably because Silicon Knights, besides the Metal Gear 1 remake, didn't really make any great game after that. It's pretty much their swan song. But that game deserves a sequel.
It does. There was a Kickstarter for the spiritual sequel, and it completely failed.
Nobody trusts them anymore after To Human and what's the other game they tried to do that was crappy, or they did? I don't remember.
I don't even recall. But yeah, you're right. That's it. That's a good one. That is a good one. And I don't know if it would make my list. But I think I've mentioned this story like 1,000 times where there's a section where, okay, good Lord, I can't speak today. There's a sanity effect where the volume decreases and increases, and then the TV goes out. And at the time when I played that game, on my television was the exact same volume screen, like the icon or whatever was exactly the same. So I was freaking out, and not they got me. I knew that the game had sanity effects, I totally knew that. But I was like, what the hell's going on with my TV? And then the screen goes black, and I was like, oh, don't tell me my game's broken. But anyways, that was really, really good. So I guess it's my turn for number 3.
Go ahead.
All right. This is a game that I have not had the opportunity to actually... I don't think I've ever reviewed this, ever. like on the site, on the YouTube or anywhere else, and I have had very little chance to actually talk about it, and that is Dead Space. That is a very, very well put together, well thought out game. I loved the first one and the second one. I never got around to. I think there was a third one. I never got around to playing that because I believe it was like co-op and stuff like that, and that is not at all what I want from this type of game. Dead Space is basically, think of it like Metroid Prime, except instead of having, bright, well, Metroid Prime had some dark areas too, but imagine you're on a derelict, like, spacecraft, and something is in there that is, like, turned people into these, like, just ravenous creatures, and you're starting to lose your mind, everyone's starting to lose their mind, and you don't know what the hell's going on, but it's that Metroid sort of feel where you're alone in this derelict spacecraft that's floating off in the middle of nowhere, and you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. I was very uneasy playing that game. Like, it really got to me. Like I had mentioned before, it takes a lot. It really does take a lot to get me, because I build up like this immunity to it. But with that game, for whatever reason, that never happened. Like, I was uneasy the whole game with that, because I don't know, it just did such a good job with the isolation of elements where you're alone, you there's nothing you can do. You know that around any corner there could be these creatures hanging from the ceiling and the walls jumping out underneath. They're just like everywhere, and yeah, that was a really, really good game that I don't think gets enough praise, really.
That's always been a game that I always wanted to try, and it sucks because I know that this is a game that would scare the heck out of me, and I always didn't try the game because of my limitations of how much of a scary cat I am. And I think I might try it one day, because with Until Dawn I was surprised at how much I was able to play it. So maybe this one, I know it's probably a little, like 100 times more scarier than Until Dawn, but I still, one day I need to try the Dead Space series for sure.
And what's your number 3?
For me, it's a series, actually. It's a series by Telltale, and it's the Walking Dead series. There's been, I believe, 2 seasons so far, and the third season, I think, is going to be released. Like, it's not even announced yet, if I'm not mistaken, because they're working on some more. I think they're working on Game of Thrones right now. They did Wolf Among Us, which was fantastic. And I know they've had a bit of slack lately because their games have a lot of bugs in them, and that's true. But I really, really enjoyed the Walking Dead video games because I was a huge fan of the comic books. After a while, I finally caved in and I've started watching this TV series, and I thought they did a fantastic job with it. But the games are amazing, and I don't know if you've played them yet, but they're really, really well done. And they have their moments too where you're like pretty stressed out, especially when they put you in sewers where there's tons of zombies and you have to react quickly. The only thing I will say though is that I wish it would be a bit more like Until Dawn, where if you get killed, well, too bad, you're killed. But I know that it would make for very short games in some instances. But still, Walking Dead, number 3 pick.
Nice. And no, I have not had a chance to really jump into those games, and I have them. I'm actually looking at them right now. Even the the Wolf Among Us, I haven't had a chance, and that's a real shame. I wanted to check those out because my brother's raved. He's bought all of the Telltale games and says they're like fantastic. So I need to do that.
Yeah, and
all right.
If you're interested, like Walking Dead Season 1, easiest platinum ever. Just beat the game.
Ooh.
So there you go.
So what's your number 2?
My number 2 is actually Resident Evil 2.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's my favorite of the classic Resident Evils. Some people prefer the original. I don't know why. I think Resident Evil 2 is by far superior to the original. And I actually covered that game last year for the 2014 Halloween special, and I had a blast playing it. Like I mentioned in the review, I was actually going to play a few hours, because I never tried the N64 version, and that's the one I had recently purchased, and actually ended up beating it in one sitting, I believe, because it's just so addicting, that game. I don't know about you, how much you love Resident Evil 2, but I don't know, I've always been addicted to that game. I think it's just like from start to finish, it never lets up.
You must be excited for the remake then.
Yes, I am.
So the only reason I kind of prefer, or why I selected remake over any of the other ones, I think is just because, like what I said, it got me more than any of the other Resident Evils have, because I just, it played with your mind, and I have a feeling that the remake of Resident Evil 2 could surpass the remake of the original Resident Evil because of that. Because I played the living snot out of Resident Evil 2 when that originally got released. So yeah, I'm a big, big fan of that. The only reason why, when we talk about classic Resident Evil, why I always go back to the original Resident Evil, is simply because I'd never experienced anything like it. That's the only reason why I keep going back all the time about it. But with Resident Evil 2, that was my most anticipated game of 1997, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's when it was released. That was just crazy. That was so crazy. I'll never forget that. I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, they give you 2 games in one. Because of the 2 scenarios, and then you're being hunted, and that was something, man. That really was something.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 2 is a surprise. It is. It's a real surprise. So is my number 1. But my number 2 is a game that okay, what's the story with this? I think it was sent to me, or anyway, whatever. And it's a game that also takes place in space. And it also deals with isolation. Do you know what that is? It also has the Alien franchise in it. That game, Alien Isolation, I know, like people said, it was repetitive and it gets a lot of flack and this and that and everything else, but man, did that scare the crap out of me. That game, I have not played a game like that in, I don't think, ever. That really, really got to me. The fact that the alien comes, at different times, depending on the sounds you make and this and that and everything else, that really... Like, I just talking about it now, I'm picturing myself by the TV, and my hands are shaking because I'm like, oh my God, don't hear me, don't hear me, don't hear me. And he just, or it rather, just slowly walks by as I'm in a locker, and it just keeps moving. And my hands are literally shaking because I'm just like petrified that I'm going to die. If you don't know about the game, basically you have no weapons, is basically it. And it's like you against the alien. And you're just trying to go from one location to the next and what have you, and just survive is essentially it. And it's just so incredibly creepy. It's unbelievable. That really, when we talk about horror games, that's up there.
Yeah, we talked about this game in last year's podcast because I believe it was my number 1 the scariest games. Because I've never played something scarier than Alien Isolation. And the thing is, I always tell people about that game, is that if you get spotted by the alien, if he just spots you, automatically in a matter of milliseconds or a second or 2, you're dead. There's no, but what if or buts, there's nothing. You're dead, period. And I thought that was just phenomenal because it creates a sense of like, it puts you basically in the shoes of your character. And I played that game with friends, and we were all scared as shit playing that game. And I can't imagine playing that game all by myself because, well, basically I've never played it since because I don't have the courage to go back to that game. And there's also I have problems with it's hard to advance that game, I believe, because there's lots of backtracking and lots of the alien's always around, so you can play for 15 minutes, do good progress, but then screw up one part and he kills you and you have to do all that over again. So there's a few issues I had with that game, but I still thought it was pretty good, and like I said, probably the scariest game ever.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, really, you nailed it. So what's your number 2?
My number 2 I did was Resident Evil 2, so now we're at your number 1.
You want me to give my number 1?
What we did was 2 games, yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So this is kind of cheating. as usual, it's me. It's something because it's not really a game, and it's a game. Well, it's what you're watching right now. This was without a doubt something that came out of left field for me. I did not expect this whatsoever, like at all. I did. Did I not do a video on this?
You did, yeah.
And I was just blown away. I mean, really, when you talk about a horror game and the feelings of dread, and yes, you could talk about the scariness factor, you could talk about all of this, but horror is usually like, it's that feeling of just dread. It's not necessarily that you're scared, but there's something really wrong here. And nothing like the PT demo has ever done what the PT demo did for me. It was just, every time I would go into like a new area, a new room, and you'd see like bugs crawling on the wall, you'd have that baby fetus in the sink and all that, like, wow, man, did that ever get me. And the first time I played that, I was completely alone, and it was raining outside, if I recall correctly, so I didn't want to put like much light on, but I didn't even know what this was. I just heard that there's this new demo, and I rarely check out demos and things like that. And I gave it a download, and sure enough, I was like, holy mother of God, like this thing was genuinely freaking me out that I had to turn the light on, and I almost never have to do that. And just by a fluke that it was you who said that, hey, check to see if you still have the demo. And I was like, well, I didn't remember deleting it, but I did delete a whole bunch of stuff because with these modern consoles, you have to constantly do that. And anyways, sure enough, I went into my library, and yeah, there it is. And that's how you're watching it right now.
Yeah, because I think you would have had to be pretty stupid to delete that demo. Because
yeah, especially
you could sell your PlayStation 4 on eBay, and if it has like the PT demo on it, I think you can get like almost $1,000 for it.
Yeah, that's crazy. People are nuts. But it's what I find sad is that this glimpse, even if Silent Hills wasn't going to be anything like that demo, whatever, it's just the thought of what could have been is what is just so damn unfortunate. Like, it really sucks because that was genuinely creepy. And the fact that, Silent Hills obviously is canceled. Kojima's like taking off from Konami. Konami's like going to be working on mobile games pretty much like exclusively with pachinko slot machines. Like, it's just so sad. It's so sad to have that constant reminder of just what could have been.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It would have, like, that game would have been amazing, but Konami's kind of losing it these days, so hopefully I've been hearing about a similar game to that. You probably know more about it, Project Allison or something like that.
Yeah, there was a Kickstarter for that, right?
People keep associating it to the PT demo. I don't know why.
I know. I think it was Alpha Omega Sin did something like that.
So is it like the same developer or something, or?
No, I don't think it's the same developer. I think it's just someone who's like copying it, the same style.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called Allison Road. I'm just gonna check it out here. Why not? So let's see, Allison Road Kickstarter. Well, let's see if it was funded. What's going on? This is weird. I don't see the Kickstarter page. Oh yeah, it looks quite creepy.
Oh well, let's. I'll while you're searching and all that, maybe we can come back to that. I'll talk about my number one.
Talk about your
favorite horror game
ever.
It's something that might not surprise you. And actually, one of these days, I want us to sit down and do our top 5 favorite video games of all time, because this game actually sits at number 4 for me.
Ooh.
And it is Resident Evil 4. Oh, the shame. People must be throwing tomatoes at me because it's, in some parts, it's a crime to love that game because it's so drastically different from the others. but I don't care. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I just think I still think to this day that it revolutionized the action genre, like I say all the time. It's funny because I don't know if you remember when I did my review for Last of Us, and I called it Last of Us. I said it was the Resident Evil 4 of this generation. And I got absolutely destroyed by somebody in the comment section. And you can still find that review on the old site, on the blog, rather the current site. If you search, you can find it. And like I thought I made some good points. And like I said, that Resident Evil 4 was the best game of last gen, 2 gens ago. And that Last of Us was this game, this generation's top game. And like, it's funny how many people. The same is even is true with Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 5 gets even more hate, even though I find it's a pretty good game. But Resident Evil 4, people go absolutely nuts if you mention that game because apparently it's a sin to hate, to love that game. And even you, I believe, never gave it a true chance. And it's something that I always like find funny. But for me, Resident Evil 4 is an absolute masterpiece.
Yes, I remember that comment. You were very happy with that, if I recall correctly. That was really something. Resident Evil 4 is the one for me that I think is always going to be. It's always going to be the weird one for me, always, because it was. How do I say this? It was like the middle child. So it wasn't a classic Resident Evil, but it wasn't the new action-centric Resident Evil either. It was in between the two games. And I have been meaning to go back and play that. I mean, I went and I picked up the GameCube version purposely so that I could re-experience the original game on my Wii. I played till I got past... Okay, I found, I don't remember her name. What's her name? The daughter there?
Oh, Ashley? Is it Ashley?
Yeah, Ashley, that's it. So I just got Ashley, started taking her around. I believe there's like a church section or something, right? What's the guy there? He's there's like a boss fight where with the guy in the trench coat. And like the second phase of that, if I recall correctly, everything's on fire. And he's... Well, that's where I stopped after that fight. So how far was I?
Oh man, I haven't played that game in
so
long. I've been meaning to go back, and I think this is something I'll do soon because I love that game so much, and just hearing you talk about it. Because I remember back in the day, I think you when it came out, you played that game like a month after, like you were busy at the time playing like a dozen other games, and you played it, beat it, and moved on. I actually went and bought that game on launch day, whatever. I say lunch, weird, but how do you say lunch?
Lunch.
Okay, fine. I thought it sounded like when you eat or whatever. But
well, that's lunch.
Yeah. Okay, so back in the day, I was actually working. I was living in Hull, and I was working McDonald's night shifts. I was like maybe 19 years old back then, and I actually finished my night shift in the morning, and I went to the EB Games there and picked up that game, and we played because my brother-in-law was with me. He actually picked up the game also, and we played at my house. Then he went back at his house and played his version. But we played for like till 10 at night, and the following day I beat it. So I beat it in 2 settings. And then I went right away and I put it on professional, and I think that people need to experience Resident Evil 4 on professional at least once, because that mode is the closest you'll come to feeling like a survival horror games. Because I think Resident Evil 4 still plays like a survival horror games, but not as much as Resident Evil. And I think it's just an evolution of the genre. Because even if you play a survival horror game today, you'll find that there's a lot more ammunition that you're used to, simply because you're better at it than you were back then, I believe. But anyway, if you play Resident Evil 4 on professional, you'll find that it's, I think, one of the best survival horror experience you'll have, because the ammunition really is low. And there's a section in the game where they pit you in a cage against one of those blind dudes that has those Wolverine claws. That's simply incredibly challenging on professional, and like it gets your heart pumping really. That's what it does. And after clearing that game on professional, I actually went and did speed runs of that game. So I kept beating that game, and then you unlock all the weapons, and then you get the rocket launcher. And I must have beaten it a dozen times. I was able to get my time like under like I think an hour and 30 minutes was like my best time. And that's a pretty long game. Like Resident Evil, I think it's a 15, 20-hour game the first time. So if I was at a point where I knew that game by heart, and then the PlayStation 2 version came out, like I believe 9 months after, and I did the same thing with that game, and I played the Ada Wong missions, and I thought that was I just love that game so much, and I just, it gets to me why people give it so much slack. Like I can live with the fact that some people prefer the originals, and that's fine, but I still think this is one heck of a game that, I don't know, it's a game changer for me.
Yeah, and I don't know why someone would give it flack. Like, I don't give it flack at all. I readily admit that, like, I understand what it did and everything like that. It definitely evolved the series, and it was necessary, absolutely necessary, even though I am one of the people, like, when I captured the Saturn footage of the original Resident Evil, to me, Resident Evil 1 is my Resident Evil 4 for you. I played that game unlike any other game, I think, outside of like A Link to the Past and maybe Super Metroid. I think for a 3D game, I believe the original Resident Evil holds the record for the most amount of times I beat that game. I played the launch model with the long box PlayStation version. I then picked up the director's cut. Even though there was the director's cut, yes, absolutely. That was the big one. That was the one that introduced the arranged difficulty mode. And that is exactly like what you're saying with professional mode. You cannot kill the zombies in the game. You can't. You do not have enough ammo. If you want to take down the zombies, you're just dead. You will not have enough ammunition to take out the snake boss or anything else. So you need to conserve all of your ammo for the hunters, for the tyrant, and for the snake. You cannot kill regular zombies. If you kill regular zombies, well, you're finished. And same thing, I was able to go through the entire game. I think the lowest I ever got was like 45 minutes or something like that. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, I knew that game inside and out, what to skip, and like, you could not take ammo, you couldn't take health because there was nothing. And anyways, when the greatest hits version came, I picked it up, and even though I did not use the analog stick, and that was the only thing that really was on that version of the game, was that you could use the DualShock, I actually played it again, just because, well, why not? So I know exactly how you feel. Like, when there's a game that comes out like that really connects with you, it's something special. Yeah,
I was just really surprised at the time that you never really went back and played it more, but I remember like a few years ago you were actually planning on reviewing it, and then I think you moved.
Yeah, and
I think you were like 10 hours in, and you were really enjoying it. You were texting me back then, and you were like, "Man, this is amazing." You were starting, not saying that you were changing your opinion, but you were starting to get what I was saying about the game a bit more, but you unfortunately had to stop, and you never went back to it. So that would be a future plan eventually when you get time, maybe go back and review that game and give it like just a second chance, or just try a professional, or try a few more things. Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think you'll ever like it as much as I do, but maybe you'll be a bit more closer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I was far. I remember that. Like, I was definitely making progress. I do want to just mention one thing about this Allison Road game. They actually canceled the Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because the game has got a publisher.
Oh.
Yeah, so apparently the Kickstarter was so successful that basically the guys that make Worms, Team 17, they actually run an independent games label. So they're going to help out with this game, because I think they realize that there's some serious potential here. And I watched the trailer there, and yeah, that definitely looks creepy. So that's one to keep your eye on. And I just looked at the clock, and I think we're good. So that is pretty much the wrap up of our 2015 Halloween special, and I really think we did a good job this year, if I do say so myself. I really liked the different titles we covered. I really enjoyed this podcast, and we even get to give a game away, which is always a fun thing to do, make someone happy. So, what are your last comments?
Well, again, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and be sure to leave comments, and especially I'm curious to see your suggestions for the 2016 Halloween special, and yeah, thanks for this. I really enjoyed this. It was a great idea for you had like last year, and I hope we do this again next year.
Well, as long as you help me out, it shouldn't be a problem. All right, guys. So, like Steven said, thank you very much. Really means a lot to us that all you guys check out our stuff and leave the comments and everything. And I'm happy that we have the opportunity to do a little giveaway because it's nice. It really is. It's a good feeling giving back to the community. So be sure to leave a comment. And like Steven said, let us know for 2016 because I know there's hundreds of games that have, a Halloween theme, but what do you want? Do you want scary games? Do you even want theme? Maybe every year we do a different theme. I don't know. You let us know. So that's it. We're out. Thank you so much for joining us this year, and we'll be back soon.